Surprise!
We're taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us for an incredible higher education marketing and enrollment management conference February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is
Amazing!
Thousands of copies have been sold across the United States and the world. You can pick up your copy today on Amazon.
Welcome back, everybody. It is your time to ed up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is your special guest host, Dr. Michelle Cantu-Wilson, filling in today for the amazing, incredible, and world-famous Dr. Joe Solucio. I serve as a trustee for San Jacinto College in Southeast Houston. I'm the owner of Vida Linda Consulting, a higher education leadership consulting firm that offers practical leadership training for the executive, to the mid-level leader, to the staff leader, to the student leader. And speaking of leaders, I'm so excited to be joined by a wonderful author and leader in her own right, none other than Ms. Juliet Hall, the author of the book, Own Your Opportunities. Welcome, Juliet.
Hi, thank you, Michelle. I'm so happy to be on the show.
We're excited to have you. And so we're going to kick it off. I'm going to ask you the hard question. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm a leadership consultant, advisor, coach, and national speaker. I love speaking on stages. I love a stage for the purpose of encouraging and inspiring others to self-maximize, to become better leaders. That's who I am. I'm a voice of hope and possibility in that regard. But prior to starting my leadership consulting agency, Juliet Hall, Inc., I was in corporate America for 20 years, and I worked in various capacities. I have a diverse background in banking operations, in franchisee consulting, and in community affairs and corporate storytelling.
Wow, that's a lot. I know about corporate stuff. I've heard corporate stuff before, but I've never heard that combination of words. That sounds like heavy lifting. That sounds like a lot of work.
It certainly was a learning experience. I never thought I'd go into corporate America, Michelle. I went to school. Spelman College is my undergrad, where I did my undergraduate work, and I actually thought I was going to go into broadcast journalism.
I can see that.
Can you see that? I had way too much fun in college, and I got distracted. Full story. So I didn't plan very well. I wasn't the most disciplined student, and so when I graduated, I needed a job, and I really worked for the only company that would work for me, which was a bank. And so I worked for them for 3.5 years. I decided that's not for me. That culture's not for me. And then I made a career pivot to another organization to work for a food service organization, a respected brand. And I was with them for 17 years. And that's really where I grew. That's really where I was able to cut myself and discover who I was and who I was not. And I evolved. I had many experiences, a lot of exposure from a travel perspective, from a leadership perspective. I learned from some of the best leadership thinkers inside my organization, and as well as just having access to some renowned leadership speakers that were brought into the organization. And so it was, I felt like I went to school.
Yeah, I mean, you did. And because I know your story, because I looked you up ahead of time and I got to watch some of your YouTube videos and visit your website. I'm about to order your book. I know that there is a story and there is a reason that Juliet Hall went from corporate America to owning her own business and delivering messages like the one that you deliver consistently across the country. So do you want to dive into that story?
Sure. At some point in my career, the long and short, honestly, is I felt like my leadership capacity far exceeded the sandbox I was given. And
Wow.
Wow. And that's the long and short. I can go deeper if you'd like, but
please do, because I'm writing that one down. My leadership capacity
far exceeded the sandbox.
Far exceeded the sandbox that I was given. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Well, I came to a place where I had declared my dream. I spoke to my leadership about what I wanted my career path to look like, what I believed where I could add the most value to the organization. I'm a strong believer in operating in your giftedness and your
Mhm.
like knowing what you do extremely well and becoming a master at it. And it, the capacities that I worked at before. I mean, part of the reason why my background is so diverse is because I was trying to figure out really what I
Mm.
was good at.
Mhm.
So, I didn't, when I started my career at the bank, I didn't care about anybody else's money. I cared about my own. And on top of that, I didn't like the culture. I didn't like the leader I was working for. It was
Wow.
just, it didn't, but I learned a lot. I'm very clear in letting people know every experience isn't going to be great. It's
Mhm.
actually through those moments of adversity where you have an advantage to move forward, where you can advance, because
Mhm.
it's a self-discovery process. And so but yeah, fast forward to the latter years of my career, it got to a point where I discovered that my dreams no longer fit within my job. And when
Mm.
I told my leadership, I was even asked the question, Juliet, what is your dream? What is your dream job? At the latter part of my corporate journey, I was
Mhm.
asked that question. And when I shared with them, well, this is what I would like to do with the organization, this is where I add the most value. I wanted to be uh, one of the spokespeople of the organization, one of the ambassadors of the organization, and to have
Mhm.
more of a prominent face associated with the work that I do. I was flat out told, well, the likelihood of your dreams won't exist or will not exist. The likelihood of your dreams do not exist
Mhm.
in this company. And that was enough for me, to be honest. I was like, well, and I was faced with choices. Okay. When someone
Mhm.
tells you no, well, then what do? You have a choice where you can either stay in the space that you're in. That was an option. Was at one point given an option to relocate to another part of the organization. Well, I didn't want to do that because it would be like starting over again. And I didn't want to work in a space where I wasn't going to thrive. And I realized
Mhm.
it's only in my area of giftedness where I am going to get the most energy, where I'm going to feel the most confident, where where I would be able to share my value,
Mhm.
and provide value to
Right.
the organization. And so, so that wasn't an option. So my other option was to leave. But somehow I knew that the writing was on the wall for me in corporate. And I prepared for my own exit because I knew that,
Mm.
I just had that feeling like, you know what, there's a line on my career.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, well, I have this saying, when you hit the glass ceiling, open a window.
I saw
And
that.
and that's
Mhm.
basically what I did. I think the message really that I like sharing with people is, you have control over your own company. I mean, over yourself, over your life. You have
Mhm.
power,
Mhm.
and you have to tap into that.
You do, but I'm sensing that you have a lot of awareness, like social awareness and organizational awareness. And so I wanted to go back to that conversation that you had where you shared where you felt you could offer the most to that company that you were working for. And I want to ask you, what do you think was the barrier there that existed within that organization that caused them to miss out on the opportunity to have you do that kind of work, or to even consider a trial basis, or a small pilot experience, if you will? So what was the barrier there organizationally that you can talk about now, in hindsight, or maybe you even saw it then? Because I think I know what you might say from my own experiences, but I want to see if it's the same.
Well, I believe that if I'm really honest, I think the barrier, I do
If you're
think,
talking to me, you don't have a choice.
yeah. I mean, this is what I know to be true, that when there's a risk to being in the spotlights. There's a risk because when you're in the spotlight, you can either become a threat or a target. I don't, if you've read the book 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, the first law is never outshine the master. And if I'm really if I'm honest, and I am very honest, by the way, I'm very honest and transparent. So I believe that it had gotten to a point where because I wasn't getting the opportunities inside the organization that I wanted, I took the initiative to find those opportunities outside the organization. And I was getting noticed for it. And I was, and those opportunities being just opportunities to speak. Okay. I mean, I love a stage. I'm very honest about that. And that's a very public facing gift, honestly, or skill, or however you want to say it. But I would just, if I couldn't represent the organization, I just wanted to go out. I wanted to inspire people on my own, inspire people with a leadership message, inspire people on their career paths. I mean, the very same things that I'm doing now. And when you're operating, again, when you're doing something that you love to do and you do it very well, it attracts attention. And one opportunity begets another opportunity. And before you know it, I'm speaking in front of a graduating class of junior college students at Georgia Military College, and and that just kind of created some problems. I speak more about that in my book, but I think that was really, I think that triggered it. Now, in fairness, I am a very focused and a very determined person. I don't like being told no. And so I give my best to the company when I'm working for the company, but outside the company is my time. And I just don't believe that anybody should control that. And so there was friction there. I don't like having to ask for approvals to do things that are good things to do. And it has no bearing it doesn't infringe upon the time that I give to an organization. I just think it's unfair to control. So that was part of the problem. I think that I just, I should have read Robert Greene's book before I left corporate America, but I'm glad I didn't.
Well,
I wouldn't be able to do now.
Well, two things here. One, you have your own laws, I think, because even as we've been talking, I've written down three things. I've written down operate in your own giftedness, find opportunities outside the organization, be prepared for your own exit. So I think, maybe there's another book in there for you, but what I heard from that story, just from an organizational perspective, because I'm always looking for that, is some companies, some organizations, and we see this in higher ed, which is my background, and which is what this podcast focuses on mostly, they lack the ability to pivot in innovative ways, right? And so thinking about like marketing strategies, trying something different. I was at a board meeting last night where, the head of marketing was sharing that the team had received all these awards, and it was because they took chances. It was because they did something innovative. And she thanked the board for allowing her to go out on a limb and do these, new and different marketing techniques. But it worked, and so I just kind of bemoan, the idea that organizations can't pivot in innovative ways and celebrate the talent that exists within the company. A lot of times we're more willing to hire the outside talent, which benefits you and I in our own, companies. But, sometimes it's important to lift our own from within. So that's kind of what I took from that part of it. But tell us about the leadership aspect of what you do. So how do you inspire leaders, and what kind of feedback do you get on what you share and how it impacts leaders in particular?
Yeah, so there are really only two messages that I focus on for the most part,
Hmm.
and that is servant leadership
Hmm.
and
Love it.
self-maximization. Servant leadership because that was again, I want to give credit where credit is due. I had an amazing experience working in corporate America overall, considering all the highs and the lows.
Hmm.
And I when I teach servant leadership, it's within a framework of becoming or being a champion of people and leading from the heart,
Hmm.
because servant leadership really does start with the heart condition.
Hmm.
Um, a general care for people where you want to develop them to be the best that they can be to help you achieve the goals that you have. When you give people what they need, they will give you what you want.
Right.
And I try to have a very fundamental message within servant leadership of understanding that and understanding the needs of people and what
Hmm.
motivates them. Because if you can tap into that, then you will get the most out of them. And that's
Hmm.
ultimately what every leader should be thinking of: is how do I get the most out of my people?
Right.
If my needs were met in corporate America, I would still be in corporate America and I would give them everything that I had. And
Isn't that the truth?
so yeah, so when I'm speaking to audiences and hoping to inspire them, I try to present not so much techniques as
Hmm.
techniques of leadership, but more of, let's get to the heart of it. Do you want to be the kind of leader that intimidates or the kind of leader that inspires?
Hmm.
And I just try to speak from that fundamental individual message, um, of servant leadership. And so that's that. And then, with self-maximization, that ties into my book,
Hmm.
Own Your Opportunities, because I also believe that even when you are told, I believe this, that when you sign up to work for somebody else, you are on their payroll. You choose to be on their payroll.
Hmm.
And they also choose, they just like they chose you to be in part of their organization, you chose them. And I think we forget about that sometimes, with some of the messages that training messages around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are, and that's important, because I
Hmm.
do think that leaders, again, DEI messages at the end of the day really are all about how do you get the most out of your people. But I
Hmm.
also think that there's an individual message. That's the
Hmm.
message for leaders, but for the employees, for the lead, they have to recognize that you got to become your own champion. you
That's
can't
true.
expect, you cannot expect to, you cannot expect your leaders to, they don't, how can I say it? Let me say it this way. It's up to the individual to develop themselves. When I was in corporate America, I remember one of the people who reported to me asked me the question, Juliet, well, how are you going to develop me? I looked at him. I said, I said, well, hold up, wait a
Oh, I
minute.
have some
I,
thoughts on that.
I said, that's your job. It's your job to develop yourself. But what I
It
can
is, but
do,
Attention.
Are you ready to elevate your institution's marketing and enrollment strategies? Join the EdUp Experience podcast at the Insights EDU conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't miss out on this opportunity to hear from engaging speakers from industry-leading companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and higher ed leaders. Learn the latest marketing and enrollment strategies to grow your programs. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration.
Attention. Oh, yeah.
Join the movement to mobilize and revolutionize higher education by picking up your copy of Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education today. This book has been featured in Forbes, NPR, Harvard Business Review, CEO World Magazine, NBC News, CBS News, and Business Insider, among many others. Don't miss out on what today's highest college leaders have to say about the future of higher education. Pick up your copy on Amazon.
Don't you see, or do you see an increase in that type of mentality? Because I just had a conversation with some of my higher ed colleagues the other day, and it was about, that the topic of mentoring and how it has become so demanding. The requests are coming fast and furious, and it's almost like, can you give me the Cliff's Notes to how you were successful and guarantee my success by me just applying the same things that you did by learning them the hard way and taking 20 years to do it? Do you find that that's kind of out there in our workplace?
I certainly get plenty of requests for mentoring, and I don't, but that's why I wrote my book, right?
Yeah.
What I do.
I love that. I love you said that. That's why I wrote my book, because I'd be happy to point people to your videos and say, watch this. She captures it perfectly, but no, I don't have time to do that specific mentoring. Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's why I wrote the book, because I everything that I'm even sharing with you, it's all in my book. And I'm just providing sound bites. And
right.
So when I get and it's so interesting, even the people that I used to work with in corporate America, actually, I shouldn't say that I used to work with, but people that I don't know who work for one of the organizations that I used to work for. It's amazing how many people are reaching out to me and just wanting to talk to me. And I'm very intentional about drawing a line there and just directing them to my book. But that's why that's why I wrote the book. That's why I have YouTube messages. I'd like to consider myself a virtual mentor of sorts. But I do mentor people. But I do want to go back. It's good that there is an increase in mentoring requests. I would much rather people pursue a mentor, and you can pursue a mentor inside the organization you work or outside the organization you work. That's part of development. That's part of development. And I would rather them seek a mentor than try to seek a sponsor. I think you got to manage expectations around that sponsorship message, because what I'm not hearing when I just listen to other people speak, about how do you get your seat at the table and, messages for women, it usually comes down to, getting an ally. If you're a Black woman, a white ally. If you are, or just a woman in general, a male ally. And that's important. That's important. And then I hear the word sponsor. And I'll be honest with you.
I've never heard that. Explain that to me.
What sponsor? So a sponsor.
Well, I mean, I know what a sponsor is, but not in the context that we're speaking.
So in the context that we're speaking, a lot of women are encouraged, you need a sponsor. If you want to have a seat at the table, you need to have a sponsor, someone who can speak for you in your absence, someone who can advocate for you, at their level of influence. And that's great if you have that. But the reality, I think what's missing is the reality of even getting the sponsors. You don't choose a sponsor chooses you. I mean, if you think about, I use this analogy because I like to play tennis, but I think about the tennis players that I follow, and specifically the Williams sisters, they're legends.
Yeah, fantastic.
they, before they even got a sponsor, there were things that they had to do first. They had to prove themselves as tennis players. They had to
Mm-hmm.
train. They had
Mm-hmm.
to basically come up through the ranks.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have some wins. People needed to see their talent,
So they
before.
self-maximized.
So they self-maximized, okay?
Mm-hmm. I
While
see
they
it.
were even on the streets of Compton, those community courts in Compton, those rundown courts,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they worked with what they had. They didn't
Right.
just roll up into the country club, expecting. No, they started where they were, and they maximized the opportunities in front of them, and they got wins under their belt, and they got training under their belt. Their dad trained them first, or parents, their mom and dad. Anyway, I'm sure I'm missing some elements to the story, but that's essentially when you're talking about sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
A sponsor needs to already see that you are a proven talent
Right.
worth advocating for.
Right.
And
Right.
I just think that gets missing. I think that that's why I say get a mentor. Look for a mentor versus a
Mm-hmm.
sponsor, and you can go
Yeah.
outside the company for that.
I wonder how we're going to get past the challenges that we're seeing in the workplace. Burnout is a reality. It is with us. If it's not with us, it's looming. I was reading the other day about performance punishment, where you perform so well that you get more work, right? And you have people operating outside their pay grade. You have people getting promoted quickly because positions cannot be filled. And I wonder, is it possible for us to reset our mindsets in the workplace so that we can better hear the messages that you're sending? Because it sometimes feels productive to vent. It sometimes feels productive to go down into that space where you're hyper analyzing what's wrong with the organization and how it could be fixed, and how it could be better. But the reality is, it goes back to what you're saying about the individual, and you said it in one of your YouTube videos. You were speaking in Canada, and you said something like, you don't owe your life to the company or to the organization. And so I wonder, what would you advise someone who's listening right now, who is in the throes of that burnout, who needs to go back and pull away from their loyalty to the organization, if you will, and get back centered with themselves? So as we're closing out in the last few minutes, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but can you just speak directly to them right now? Because your voice is so powerful and your message is so heartfelt. Can you just give us like a 1-minute motivational recentering for the individual who needs to hear what you are trying to say?
I would tell people, so for those who are at that place, number one, just remember that you were created for a specific purpose. Just remember that you are uniquely created, uniquely shaped, and there, inside of you, there's a gift. There's something that you do extremely well that feels like a natural extension of who you are. Tap into that. Now you have to develop that. All right. But this is how what makes you feel like a genius.
Mm-hmm.
What gives you so much energy? If you are, what I have learned in my journey is that when I got to a place where my career had met my call, where
Mm-hmm.
I found myself at a place where I was doing what I love to do, motivating people, inspiring people from the stage, providing guidance for them so that they could maximize their own leadership or their own lives. I felt so much freedom in that space. I felt so strong, and
Mm-hmm.
there was no burnout for me. There was no burnout because I enjoyed providing that fruit
Right.
to people. So find your fruit, find that seed inside of you,
Mm-hmm.
and develop that seed, because there is something that you can do that nobody else can do, at least not quite like you.
Mm-hmm.
And tap into that. But just so let's start there. Self-discovery
Mm-hmm.
is the work. That's really the work that you do in this world. The 9-to-5 job that you have, that's not
Mm-hmm.
who you are. When I worked at my company and I had a badge that, I was branded every day,
Mm-hmm.
I put that name badge on. That wasn't who I was, even though I made that my identity. That was my mistake to make
I
it
was
my.
branded every day.
I
Wow.
was branded every day. And really, truth be told, the expectation was I had to be branded the whole day, every day, 24/7, because I had to get approvals for what that
Right.
I didn't think I needed to get. But
Right.
that's my message. Self-discovery is the genesis of true leadership. So if you really
Mm-hmm.
want to lead, if you really want to create an impact and be influential, you've got
Mm-hmm.
to tap into the place that honestly God created you to be. Your creator created, there was something that that your creator embedded inside of you to add light to this world, to edify
Mm-hmm.
others in this world. And when you find that place, your life will change. So that's what
Beautiful.
I would say. And number 2, always think beyond your job.
Mm. That is great advice. Do we need to say even more? Because that is like mic drop, right? Joe, Solush Joe, has a little, podcast kit where he does funny sounds, and he would have done the explosion at that point, because that was amazing. Juliet, I feel better from listening to you and talking to you, and I can imagine that when you go away from audiences that you are making that change. So I just encourage you to get out there as much as you can, because people need to hear this message. I think it's so necessary as we evolve in the workplace and try to find a new stasis, right? A new normal that we're still talking about. And I really appreciate your message to the individual, because I think that is so important. So I'm going to ask you, what do you see as the future of leadership? And if there's anything that we missed in talking to you that you want to share with our audience, feel free to do so after you answer that first question.
The future of leadership, that's a hard question for me to answer, because I feel like this world is so polarized. I feel like some of the leaders that we really have, whether they are in public office, or education, or what, I just don't think enough people are true to who they are. I really don't. I think that because we live in a democracy, leaders don't necessarily have the freedom to, or they don't feel like they do, even though they do. But it is disheartening for me to see leaders who don't make decisions according to their belief system. And I'm talking about leaders all over, even leaders in the church, faith-based institutions. They go against what they've been taught or what they truly believe. So, so when you talk about the future, I mean, honestly, Michelle, I'm a little nervous. I don't know. I mean, it's why I do what I do. It's why I speak to people, because I want people to be true to themselves. I want people to be, to operate in a spirit, in a mindset of truth.
Right.
And I don't see that. And it's just a different world. I'm a Gen Xer. And the
Me
things
too.
that, I just, it's the world that I grew up in is very different than the world that we're in now. And I just think that it's going to take an incredibly strong, character-driven, morally centered, oh gosh, I want to choose my words carefully here, but it's deeply convicted leader who hasn't lost his human touch with people. That's a tough ask, because it's a tough ask, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the future of leadership is because when you ask the question right now, my mind is going to the leaders that we see on TV, the top leaders, the
Sure.
political leaders,
Sure.
the church leaders. It's going there.
Right.
But I will say this: the future is in you. If you can become the best leader, if you know what,
Excellent.
I may not ever run for office to give this message,
Mhm.
but you know what? I can be a great citizen. I can be
Sure
a
you
dutiful
can.
citizen, and I can
Absolutely.
lead by example. I can
Absolutely.
lead by example and maybe provide a standard for other leaders to model on
I
my
love
level.
it. I love it. I knew you would bring it home. I knew you would. The future is in you. I appreciate that so, so very much. I wish we could talk more, but we have to close out the podcast here shortly. Is there anything that you want our audience to know about you? Any events, any information about your book, anything else that you're doing?
Well, I love to speak. So, invite me to your book club, invite me to your
Hmm.
organization. Invite me. I love to speak. I love to share this message. And, I would encourage everyone listening who's interested, definitely go to my website, juliethall.com.
Hmm.
Check out my YouTube channel. You'll hear, I'm speaking to you right
Yes,
there
you
in the
are.
YouTube channel.
Hmm.
I also like Instagram and LinkedIn as well. So
Very good.
I'm very engaged. If you have any questions, reach out to me. If you disagree with anything that I'm saying, let's have a civil conversation. No name calling. There's no need for
Right.
all of that. Let's just exchange our views, our ideas, and
Hmm.
I'm happy to engage in that way because I really believe in my message. I believe that the power is in us and the
Hmm.
future. So there.
Hmm. Very good. Well, I have so very much enjoyed talking to you. I'm thrilled that I got to meet you. I'm excited about ordering your book, and I encourage all of our leaders out there to consider the idea that the reset that is necessary has to come from people who have the ability to carry that message. And I think, Juliet, you have that ability to carry that message and to inspire people. So thank you for being our guest today. Um,
Thank
all right, folks. So we are at the end of our podcast. I want to encourage you to make sure that you check us out, you download, you like, you leave reviews. Send a shout out to Joe and Elvin on LinkedIn and all social media. Thank you so much, Juliet, for joining us. And for everyone out there listening, you just ed up.
Oh, yeah.
Attention higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. We are taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us at Insights EDU on February 20th to 22nd, 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. Gain insight into the latest higher education trends and cutting-edge marketing strategies that'll take your institution's enrollment to a whole new level. This is your opportunity to connect with higher education leaders and marketing experts from across the country. Comprehensive presentations, engaging panel discussions, and more. Insights EDU will equip you to position your institution for growth. Register now at insightsedu.com and use the code EDUP to save $50 off your registration. Can you afford to miss this conference?
I don't think so. Attention.
Forbes called commencement the beginning of a new era in higher education, a dispensable touchpoint for what's being said in, about, and around higher education now. Don't miss the insights from 125 college and university presidents about what the future of higher education holds. Pick up your copy of Commencement on Amazon today.